Deep in the Alaskan wilderness stands a forest of antennas, a strange and imposing grid pointing to the heavens. This is HAARP. For decades, this facility has been at the center of persistent and widespread conspiracy theories. They say it's a super weapon. They say it can control the weather. They say it can trigger earthquakes. They say it can manipulate human minds. The stories are dramatic and have spread like wildfire across the internet, fueled by distrust of hidden government projects. These narratives paint a picture of a sinister machine that could wreak global havoc. Even as officials call it harmless, these theories are not new. They date back to HAARP's construction by the U.S. Air Force. Recent events have breathed new life into old fears. Far from a Cold War relic, the facility is more active than ever. In August 2015, ownership was transferred to the University of Alaska Fairbanks, converting it to a civilian research center. The shift was meant to increase transparency and focus on science. Still, research campaigns continued and public suspicion grew. A clash between scientific reality and public perception persists. The core controversy. What does HAARP actually do? It is essentially a powerful radio transmitter. Its purpose? Study the ionosphere, a region of the upper atmosphere. This layer affects long-range communication and GPS navigation. Scientists send focused beams of high-frequency radio waves into it to study its properties in a controlled way. Researchers say this work is vital for understanding space weather and protecting technological infrastructure. But many hear beaming 3.6 megawatts into the sky and think weaponization of the air. The conversation around HAARP is deeply polarized. Scientists insist capabilities are exaggerated, pointing to physics and technical limits. The public, armed with viral posts and skepticism, points to strange weather patterns and HAARP's secretive past. This essay will navigate that divide, exploring the facts behind the fear and the science behind the speculation. The story of HAARP begins not in the open fields of scientific inquiry, but in the shadowy world of Cold War military strategy. Its conceptual roots trace to Bernard Eastlund. Eastlund filed a 1985 patent for altering the Earth's atmosphere, ionosphere, magnetosphere. He imagined heating sections of the ionosphere, creating artificial lenses to reflect communication signals, disrupt enemy missiles, manipulate weather patterns on a continental scale. This was the era of Star Wars defense initiatives, when the tech race blurred science and science fiction. A primary goal: improve communication with submerged submarines. Submarines rely on very low-frequency radio waves underwater, but generating VLF needs massive, inefficient antennas. The military theorized heating the ionosphere could make a giant virtual antenna, broadcasting VLF to submarines worldwide. They wanted to understand the ionosphere during solar flares and geomagnetic storms, events known as space weather. These phenomena could disrupt military satellites, blind over-the-horizon radar systems, and cripple communication networks. By creating small, controlled ionospheric disturbances, researchers could simulate a solar storm. The remote site chosen, Gakona, Alaska. From the start, HAARP was cloaked in military purpose, seeding suspicion and conspiracy for decades to come. With the military objectives defined, the next step was to design and build a machine capable of achieving them. The solution was an innovative design known as a phased array antenna. By precisely controlling the timing, or phase, of the radio signal sent to each antenna, engineers could steer the combined energy beam electronically without any moving parts. Construction began in 1993 and proceeded in stages. The final configuration, completed in 2007, consists of 180 crossed dipole antennas arranged in a rectangular grid covering over 33 acres. And together, they can generate a combined output of 3.6 megawatts. The scientific principle behind HAARP is known as ionospheric heating. The high-frequency radio waves transmitted by the array are specifically tuned to be absorbed by the electrons and ions in the ionosphere. This absorption of energy temporarily raises the temperature of a small, localized region of the ionosphere, typically a few tens of kilometers in diameter. The effect is temporary. Once the transmitter is turned off, the heated region cools and returns to its normal state within minutes. However, the classified nature of some of this research and the sheer power of the instrument only serve to deepen the public's mystery and suspicion surrounding the Alaskan array. By the early 2010s, the strategic landscape had changed. The Cold War was a distant memory, and military priorities had shifted. In 2013, the Air Force announced its intention to shut down and dismantle the site, a move that seemed to signal the end of an era for ionospheric research in Alaska. This announcement, however, sparked a different kind of reaction from the scientific community. It remains the world's most capable high-power, high-frequency transmitter for studying the ionosphere. Negotiations were opened between the Air Force and the University of Alaska Fairbanks, a leading institution in geophysical research. The transition was made official in August 2015. In a landmark agreement, the United States Air Force transferred ownership and operation of the entire HAARP facility to the University of Alaska Fairbanks. This handover was not just a simple change of management. It represented a fundamental shift in the facility's mission. Funding was secured through a major grant from the National Science Foundation, which established the Subarauroral Geophysical Observatory at HAARP. This new chapter for HAARP was intended to demystify the facility, replacing the secrecy of its past with a new era of open data and academic inquiry, though the specter of its origins would prove difficult to shake. One major area of study involves the effects of ionospheric conditions on high-frequency radio wave propagation. Scientists can better understand how natural events like solar flares disrupt these vital communication channels, paving the way for more resilient systems. Another key objective is to explore the generation and propagation of ELF waves, VLF waves. These extremely long wavelength signals are naturally produced by lightning strikes and can travel vast distances trapped between the Earth's surface and the ionosphere. These campaigns, like the ones conducted in January 2025, November 2025, operate within specific time windows and use a range of frequencies between 2.75 MHz and 10 MHz. For example, a recent campaign introduced a Rayleigh LiDAR system, which uses a laser to measure the density and temperature of the neutral atmosphere, providing a more complete picture of the conditions during an experiment. Jessica Matthews, HAARP's director, emphasizes that the work is foundational. Researchers are studying how space weather interacts with the ionosphere, a process that can disrupt or degrade GPS signals, to eventually create better space weather prediction models. HAARP is not alone. A number of HF heating facilities exist around the world, from Russia's Sura facility to Peru's Jicamarca Radio Observatory to ACECAT in Norway and SPEAR in Svalbard. We will investigate the significant upgrades happening at similar facilities around the world, most notably the new ACECAT 3D array under construction in Scandinavia. This next-generation system promises to be vastly more powerful and flexible. This context is essential for grasping the true scope and purpose of this field of research, which is increasingly focused on space weather and its impact on vital systems like GPS. The most common and enduring claim is that HAARP is a weather control weapon. Proponents point to unusual weather events, extreme cold snaps, severe storms, prolonged droughts, and link them to HAARP's operational periods. A prime example occurred in January 2024, when Laura Loomer posted on X, formerly Twitter, that the deep state was using HAARP to create a snowstorm to rig the Iowa caucus. This single post was viewed over 2.4 million times. Beyond weather control, the theories extend into even more fantastical realms. Some believe HAARP can be used for large-scale mind control, or is responsible for the unexplained deaths of wildlife. The power of these conspiracies is offering simple explanations for complex and frightening phenomena.
Jessica Matthews, the director of HAARP, has stated unequivocally that HAARP cannot affect the weather, in Iowa or anywhere.
The reason is simple. The radio waves that HAARP transmits are in a frequency range that is not absorbed by the troposphere or the stratosphere. Since HAARP's energy does not interact with these regions, there is no physical mechanism by which it could control or manipulate weather systems. The energy released by a single, average thunderstorm is many orders of magnitude greater than what HAARP can transmit. The idea that a focused beam of 3.6 megawatts could steer a hurricane is, from a scientific standpoint, equivalent to suggesting one could change the direction of a tsunami by throwing a pebble into it. The claims are further debunked by the open nature of HAARP's current operations. The data collected from these experiments is shared within the international scientific community and is subject to peer review. While the theories may seem like harmless internet chatter, they have a tangible impact. The primary victims are the scientists, engineers, and staff, who are often targeted with harassment and even credible threats. In an effort to combat decades of suspicion, the University of Alaska Fairbanks has pushed for more transparency. The most visible example, the annual HAARP Open House. HAARP staff have learned to lean into the notoriety with humor. Director Jessica Matthews, anecdotes of people calling to ask if HAARP can guarantee good weather for weddings. Contrast, past military control, big red warning sign and tight security. The open house reaches a few hundred people. Viral posts reach millions. In the final analysis, HAARP, a tale of two worlds occupying the same space. Here, HAARP, powerful but limited tools. Their purpose? Advance human knowledge. The other world, public perception, mythology, fear. The evidence leads to a clear conclusion. Fundamental physics prevents meaningful weather control. Their energy is a drop in the ocean compared to natural forces. Path forward, a dual approach. Science must commit to open science. Society must cultivate critical thinking and media literacy. The real challenge is not weaponizing the weather, but seeing through clouds of conspiracy to evidence-based reality.